going on, Spurs fans? It's Ethan Quintero here, back with our first episode. I guess you shouldn't say back then. I should just say we are here for our first episode on SSPN. The Spurs.
Technically, we're back. We made a trailer on
That's
audio
true.
and
That's
video.
true.
Yeah.
Our technically second video, first actual content video. It's our first recap of a Spurs game. It was on March 29th, and it was against Sacramento Kings. An unfortunate loss. But we're here to break it down for you. And as always, I'm going to be here with my partner in crime, Jude McLaren. Jude, why don't you get us started here with this conversation? What were your thoughts on the game?
Well, before we get into that, there's two things that I want to say. And I was going to make a pun off of something that you said earlier, but I forget exactly what you said. But what I was going to say was that this is actually our second attempt because we recorded for a little bit, not too long, but it's just funny that that's our first episode. And, we got a little bit of, it seems like that always happens whenever it's your first episode. Mm-hmm. But going back to the partner in crime thing, like I said in the recording before, yes, I'm going to use it again. That was perfect because this game was a crime to Spurs fans. And so also, just as a PSA on my first episode, I want to say this. Everything that is critical that I may say in this, I am not Colin Cowherd. I am not, one of these people that sit on their high horse and are like, oh, they need to be better at their job. They're getting paid millions, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, look, I'm never going to be as good at basketball as these guys. That their knowledge of the game is going to be infinitely more than mine. We're just fans talking about the Spurs. So, if I get something wrong or I'm ignorant of something, just tell me in the comments and I'll fix it and take it into account in the future. But anyways, getting into the game. This game just sucked, Ethan. I mean, I feel like I've already talked a lot, and I know you just asked me for my thoughts, and I could go down and give a whole breakthrough here, but I'm actually going to swing it back to you because I'm kind of curious what you thought of it before I get into mine.
I thought at the beginning that it was going to be a good game, and I thought the Spurs were actually going to pull it out because we were notoriously bad this season in the first quarter. And we managed to come out of the first quarter with a lead 31-27. And I was like, wow, that's surprisingly good. We're always better in the second quarter. We're probably going to pull really far ahead and, maintain a solid lead all the way into the final buzzer. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And we can blame the defensive side of the ball, which I'm sure there's a lot of evidence. I watched the game where we weren't rotating correctly and we were, obviously bad with our turnovers tonight, which we're usually pretty good at. But you got to give props to the Kings. They were hitting some tough shots out there. And as always, Fox is going to be his quick, foxy self, getting into the paint, kicking it out, and letting his team make some incredible three-pointers, especially Buddy Hield and Halliburton. They were cooking us all night long. But my main takeaway, Jude, to sum up, I don't know why DeJounte Murray, who was our leading scorer for the game, finished with 23. He had 21 in the first half, 2 in the second half. I don't know much about, what was going on in the coaching side of things or whatever, or what Sacramento was throwing at DeJounte, but you got to get him some more touches in the second half when he was cooking the way he was.
Yeah, so this is something that we already kind of talked about a little bit in our first take, and I'm glad you brought it up again because I just said first take. Anyways,
we're getting copyrighted.
I know, right? No, so like I said, I don't know if it was something that the Kings did after a halftime adjustment. I don't know if it was something that the Spurs did after their halftime, adjustments. Mm-hmm. So once again, I don't know really what happened with DeJounte there in that second half. He was doing really well in the first half, obviously had 21 points. I saw it all on Twitter, and maybe it was just Spurs fans jinxing it. But his career high was 29. And with the way he was playing in that first half, it was like, oh, DJ's going to get at least 30 tonight. And he's going to break his career, scoring high in a game. And then on top of that, it was like, okay, he's probably going to carry us, in this game is what it looks like. And then once again, 2 points in the second half, and he's still our leading scorer. And this kind of goes into the offensive thing that we were kind of talking about. And it seems like the Spurs haven't been consistent offensively since the whole COVID thing happened when Derek, Devin, Keldon, and Quindary Weatherspoon, and forgive me if I'm forgetting somebody else, got COVID. since that happened, the team consistency as a whole since that happened has been tough for the team because they were on a 7-game win streak at the time, I believe. And since then have just kind of gone back and forth, maybe a couple dubs here, couple L's, couple dubs, like we just came off beating the Bulls, which I know it was their first game together as a team, a much more talented team, in my opinion, than the Sacramento Kings team. I know this Kings team definitely has some players, but I just think that Levine and Vucevic is just a better combo than anybody on here. Like De'Aaron Fox is really good, and he's probably close to Zach LaVine, but he's not averaging almost 30. And, Tyrese Halliburton maybe in 3 years will be on that level, but not right now. So I just think the way that and this is kind of like, I forget if I go back on the schedule, I'm looking at it right now. Let's see. Yeah. So you play a close, this isn't a great example, but here's one. You lose a close game to the Mavericks. This is a while back. And then they go and they blow out the Magic 104-77. And then the next game they get blown out 134-99. And I get that the Mavericks and the Sixers are better than the Magic, but there have been a couple examples this season where the Spurs have, here's an example. They lost to the Thunder and then, or they beat the Hornets 122-110. Right. And this Hornets team is actually pretty decent this year. Then you go lose to the Thunder, one of the bottom teams in the West. And then the very next game, you beat the Pelicans, who, while aren't one of the top teams in the West, they're a lot better than the Thunder. So once again, the theme here is inconsistency. So I'm kind of getting lost in my thoughts. I'm not sure where I'm going with this.
I know where you are. I know where you are.
Okay. You know where I am. Okay. I'm glad you know.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Jude.
You know where I'm at. So it's just, once again, inconsistency, especially, here's what I was getting to. I'm remembering it now. Offensively. Like the team as a whole has been inconsistent, and I think that's a lot of it has to do with the offensive inconsistency. I know they scored 115 tonight, but I think that was also a product of the pace that both these teams were playing at tonight. But going back to the offensive inconsistency since then, it seems like they just haven't really, the ball will stop more. It'll end at the end of the possession with DeMar DeRozan or Rudy Gay or Patty Mills or even DeJounte in that first half. Granted, he was making his shots. Like there's like 8, they try to get something going, like when the first pick and roll doesn't work, it's like they just, all right, well, let's just dish it out to DeJounte with 8 seconds left and try to run another one, or he'll just try to ISO and beat his man off the dribble. And then like I can't tell you how many times in the past couple of games I've seen DeMar get stuck on his pivot foot with like no space on the elbow.
Yes.
What is that? Like, no offense once again.
No,
but like, what is going on with the offense right now? It's very, I know when they play with a lot of pace and they run in transition, they don't have too many problems, but I don't know. I feel like there's just not, I don't know how to put my finger on it, but I think you get what I'm saying.
I do.
Haven't been able to mesh really offensively over the past couple games.
I've been thinking about your point for a while, actually. And I think what it boils down to, one is we haven't had our team really complete in a long time. Like you said, Derek's been in and out for a while. Keldon was hurt for a little bit. Then we had the COVID situation. And then when coming back from the COVID situation, Derek was out again for a little bit. And now Lonnie's wrist, now he's out. And then we had the whole LaMarcus fiasco where he's, he sat out for like 2
was in weeks. And out. Yeah.
Yeah. And we haven't really been complete. And I think that's been an issue as far as chemistry and moving the ball and just having that second nature of knowing where guys are back. Like we saw that in 2014. I love bringing up 2014 Spurs team because I think it's one of the criminally underrated teams because we were at such good ball movement and we haven't seen that lately. And I think there's a second point to that, which is we have these veterans who are kind of set in their ways, and that's not bad because they're really solid players. I'm thinking of DeMar and Rudy especially. And then we have all these young guys coming up, and I think they want to play with pace. I think they want to move around and run the break and all that stuff, move in transition. And like you said, DeMar, Rudy, if it doesn't work immediately, they revert back to their old ways, which is getting it in that mid-range, and they'll try and like a spin move, turnaround jumper from like 15 feet, and it either goes in or it doesn't. And, and that's just, it's like a confrontation between the Spurs way of playing and then what they're really good at, which is ISO ball. And those are constantly competing with each other. And, if sometimes it works and then sometimes it doesn't. And that's where we get this kind of incohesiveness on the offensive side.
I agree with that. And, watching the Bulls game this past Saturday, I kind of had a realization of like why the Spurs are the way they are. So if you look at their roster, right, you have a lot of players who I think like all their draft picks, all of the young guys, those are guys that pop in the front office, like drafted them because they know that they could be Spurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they have just a bunch of other dudes who can just get buckets.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and I kind of understand where they're coming from. It's the first time in my life I kind of had this realization, like over the past, since the DeMar era, it was the first time I realized, oh, they have Rudy. They even LaMarcus to an extent when he was here. DeMar, obviously. And then even I think Patty now at this point is kind of in this role too, where, and even when Marco Bellinelli was playing, like this is kind of his role also, was you had all these young guys who, pass the ball, will drive, but they're still kind of learning how to play. So whenever their possession or, their like the fluidity of the offense that they want to play doesn't work out, which is basically just them cutting to the basket and then dishing out like constantly. Like that's basically the offense with the young guys. And you can disagree with me. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're pretty much right on.
And so like, if that doesn't work out, they just have to have dudes who they can give the ball to with 8 seconds left and can get a bucket.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool, but sometimes the buckets don't fall, or, in this case, they were trying to play at pace, and the Kings were able to have a hot night shooting and play at pace the entire game, where when the Spurs got slowed down, there would be those, possessions like where DeMar is stuck on his pivot foot at the elbow. So it's a very interesting dynamic. And some nights for the Spurs, it works really well. And other nights it doesn't, like tonight. And so once again, for me, this just points to it's going to be a very intriguing offseason. And I know we'll get into that on like the Friday episode that we do, but at the same time, it's also interesting because I don't know if these young guys can really carry a team, by themselves yet. So I don't know.
I think that they're still, those young guys are all still really young. Like I think we underestimate how young they are. Like who's the oldest one? Derek, maybe? He's like 24.
No,
25?
he's 26. But the thing is with Derek is that he was drafted at 23 years old.
Yes.
So
his experience in the Spurs system is still limited. And I don't know if you saw this, but I've seen it over the past few games, really all season long. And you kind of have to look for it. But with these young guys, I'm thinking of like Luka Samanic, who hasn't had that much play time, but Luka Samanic, Keldon Johnson, who's our personal favorites, I think. He's at least mine. I'm pretty sure he's yours as well. But a lot of times I'll see them running down the court, and DeJounte or DeMar will be bringing it up, and they'll be wanting to push the pace, and they're literally having to tell, some of these young guys like Keldon and Luka, you're in the wrong spot, move. And it's like they're having to learn on the job, like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. Because like I saw it last game and this game, the exact same thing happened where DeJounte had the ball, he's pushing it up the court. Derek's on the left wing 3-point line, and Keldon goes to the left corner. So now it's too cluttered over there. Keldon needs to cut under the basket, and he'll take, like Jakob was underneath the basket, so it moves the defense away from Derek. Wide open shot for Derek. And he did it yet last game. DeJounte literally like moved him, and he did it, and the play worked. But tonight it happened a couple times, and that never happened. We never got that 3-point shot up. And I think it's just, like I said, learning on the job together. It's going to take some time, and the veterans may be getting in the way of these young guys learning. But I hate to say that because I do really like the veterans as players, and obviously DeMar's our best player on the court. And Rudy provides, some length, and especially because we need some help, which we're getting with Gorgui Dieng. But one other thought I had about tonight's game, Jakob started hot, and he disappeared quick. And I don't know if you noticed this, but Jakob can't catch a lot of these entry passes. I don't know what his problem is, but like he'll be wide open, he'll be parallel with DeMar on a pick and roll, and DeMar will like shovel it in there, and he like loses it and it goes over his head. He's got to find it. And I don't know what the issue is there, but he could get so many easy baskets if he could just catch the ball because he's so physically intimidating. And we made Rashawn Holmes look like he was better than Nikola Vucevic. Because we shut Vucevic down pretty well. Like he wasn't that dominant, but Rashawn Holmes had 23 points tonight. And that can't happen. That's that inconsistency that you were alluding to earlier.
And that's not something that like Jakob has been playing phenomenal as of late. But I understand what you're saying about like the inbound pass things too. It's like sometimes he just gets, I don't know, flustered as a way. And we're being very specific with like Jakob Pertl right now, but that's the whole point of this podcast. It's just funny because I'm thinking about like, wow, we're really diving deep into Jakob Pertl's game. Nobody in like mainstream NBA cares about this. But anyways, no. So I remember there's even a rebound this game where he goes up, gets it, but there's like two guys and they're just like kind of moving their hands and he just like gets flustered and loses the ball. And so I think just when he's crowded, his hands aren't as good. That would be my response to that. But just going over some of the notes that I have. So the first thing I have written down, and this is not something that I was expecting to say, but over these past couple games where Lonnie's been hurt, Lonnie is missed like off the bench. Like he is, I think I'm realizing now there's even when he goes like 5 for like 14 from the floor, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't even have that great of a shooting night. I'm seeing now that he's not on the floor, the impact that he has that doesn't show up on the stat sheet. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so he's a good defender. He's very athletic. He helps push the pace. And this year for us, he's been a great off-ball player and a great off-ball shooter. And so that's something that we were definitely like missing from him tonight, and have been missing from him since he's been hurt in the games that we've lost. Obviously, I had that great game against the Bulls. And speaking of that game, in that game, it's felt like the Spurs were playing pissed off. Tonight, it didn't feel like they were playing pissed off. And I think that's kind of another reason why things just kind of got bleh. Because when they play pissed off, they create turnovers, they run in transition, they score a lot of points. And that's what led to that big win over the Bulls. Like the Bulls even came back in that game and still lost by 16. So, and at one point it was a 35-point lead. So another thing I have when I wrote, when DJ is on, like when he's, just kind of, when he's in rhythm, he can take over the game for a couple possessions. I think we've seen this a couple times from him this year and even in past years, but this year really in that first half, it was like, okay, nothing's going good with the offense right now, but we can give it to DJ with 8 seconds left. He can come off a screen and hit a mid-range jumper in anybody's face. Second half, that wasn't the case. Another one I knew Chimezie Metu would be out for blood. And so it was kind of funny watching him block chase and then getting goaltends. But at the end of the day, he's got the last laugh because they got the win tonight. This was a bad loss, but this team still doesn't quit. They could have given up when they were down 18 in the third quarter and they came back and made it close. Obviously, the fourth quarter went badly. But DeMar kind of sparked that late third quarter run to go down from down 18 to single digits. And another shout out I want to give on the positive notes, holy Drew Eubanks on that lob. I did not I knew he was athletic, but I did not know he had ups like that.
I love Drew Eubanks, dude. My favorite player other than Kelvin.
and we'll get into this, I'm sure, a little bit more on Friday, or whenever we end up seeing him. But I'm very interested to see who ends up taking those backup center minutes, because I think it's going to be a battle between Gorgie Jang and Drew Eubanks, because Jang can hit the three and he's bigger. He's bigger than Eubanks. Like, as much as we love Eubanks, like, and with the way Eubanks played when Jakob didn't, honestly, I think for the Spurs tonight, Eubanks played the best, in my opinion. Like overall, like not the best, but like for a player like reaching their potential, like a player in their role, right? I think Eubanks had the best game for themselves tonight because, Derek, he hit some shots, 19 points. I guess that's kind of his role now. which is kind of weird because
Mhm.
he was taking over games in the playoffs. Like you said, I mean, Jakob still had 17 and 11 and 3 blocks when you look at the stat sheet, but
Yeah.
at the same time, he, was a little bit off defensively tonight. DeMar was 6 for 15. And while, yes, DeJounte had 23, we know that only 2 points happened in the second half. And so that's why I'm saying, meanwhile, Eubanks went 4 for 4, had 5 boards, a steal, a block. So anyways, he played a good game tonight, but it's going to be very interesting to see if he still ends up getting those minutes when Gorgui Dieng comes in. I'm sure for a little bit while they, kind of introduce Dieng to the system and all that, Eubanks will play, but whenever he's fully in, I just wonder who are going to take those minutes, but we can get into that on Friday. That's just something I was thinking about.
Yeah, I think that Eubanks, while his stats, he only had 8 points, 5 boards, 15 minutes, which is actually, he was very efficient, 100% from the field. I felt watching the game, like every time he touched the court, we our energy skyrocketed and we made a run. Maybe he wasn't the one scoring all those points on those runs, but I felt like we were playing best basketball when he was in the lineup. And I'll be interested to see if, I know we could talk about this another time, but if Gorgui Dieng and Eubanks could play together for some lineups.
That is true because Dieng can shoot the ball,
Mm-hmm.
and Eubanks, and I think Eubanks actually can kind of shoot the ball too. He's hit a 3 this year. Probably not as good as Gorgui,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is Eubanks can guard on the perimeter. Like he is 6'9". And we saw with his athleticism tonight, it's a little bit something that he doesn't get to show off much, so it goes unrecognized. So yeah, maybe that is something that they could do. That'll be interesting to see with that. I'm trying to think if I have any. I just had a thought in my head. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right, Ethan. Here's my last little thought on this game and the Spurs team. All right. And people may disagree with this, but I think you may understand where I'm coming from here.
Let me hear it.
I think that when Keldon Johnson does not play well, the Spurs do not play well overall.
I can definitely see that, but I'm going to counter your point with this point that also might get some hate if we actually have some comments. Because, let me preface this by saying Keldon Johnson is my favorite player on the Spurs. I think he's got incredible upside. You already know my position, Jude, on I don't think he should play power forward. Not because he's not talented enough or skilled enough or aggressive enough. He's got all of those intangibles. I think that he's 6'5" and he's guarding guys that are 6'9", 6'10". It takes too much energy on the defensive side. Maybe he loses something on the offensive side. But I also want to say this about Keldon.
Which is why we should start Lucas Samanic.
I want Lucas Samanic to get some more playing time. I don't know about you, but I think he needs.
I know he's god awful, but just let him develop. He's got a high ceiling.
Yeah, he's got glimpses of greatness and then just a lot of blandness.
a lot of I don't know how to play American basketball yet.
I'm just lost, especially on defense. But Keldon, I think that teams are starting to figure out a little bit how to stop Keldon. And if you eliminate his drive to the basket, he's really not going to hurt us. He's not going to hurt the other team because his shot is, if it's on, he's great. He's hitting from the corner. But more often than not, he
didn't even take a 3 tonight.
Exactly. More often than not, he's not even going to shoot it. I see him catch it on the perimeter. If he has a little bit of room, 9 out of 10 times he's going to pump fake it or jab step and then cross over and try and get into the lane. And he's so aggressive with getting inside that a lot of times he doesn't kick it out. So he'll go up with 3 dudes around him and he'll contort his body and throw it off the glass and he can get some good putbacks. So that's great. But, if you could stop him from making layups and getting those offensive rebounds, then you've really eliminated Keldon Johnson, at least offensively. Defensively, he's always good. He's got good hands. But offensively, you can have a defensive scheme that can stop Keldon Johnson at this point.
And so it's funny you mentioned that because I feel like since the All-Star break, Ethan, and call me conspiracy Jude here, but I think that he hasn't played as well since the All-Star break.
Other than the 23-point game with 21 rebounds.
Where was that? When was that?
That was 3 games ago. I don't have it
No,
pulled
like
up.
I remember that game. I know it was recently, but I forget who did they play in that game again. I'm just forgetting.
I can pull it up while you make your point.
I don't know. Point I was going to make was other than that one team. Um, I think that I agree with you. I think teams have figured out Keldon Johnson a little bit, and I think that they've figured out the Spurs also and how they play. Because I think that first half of the season, a lot of these teams, and you can interrupt me whenever you find it.
Yeah, it was against the Cavs, March
Okay,
19th.
all right. See, so that's the Cavs, and that's not to take anything away from Keldon, but the Cavs are where are they in the East right now? Like the bottom, like near the bottom.
They're not in the playoffs, other than they got Jared Allen and Sexland, and that's all they've got really.
Okay, yeah, they've got Darius Garland and Colin Sexton.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to figure out. I can't look at the standings. The ESPN.
I got you, Jude. I got you.
Yes,
Eastern
please.
Conference, they're the 13th seed. They're 17-29.
Okay, there you go. Okay, like they're not going to figure out most teams. You know what I'm saying? Like the Spurs were just better than them. So like talent wise, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that is, and I don't want to take that away from Keldon because that's the first 2020 games since Tim Duncan. So like, I don't want to diminish that at all because that I think just shows how he plays and his potential. But against other teams, I think at the beginning of the year, everybody was like, oh, they're the Spurs, like, yeah, they're playing these young guys, but who are these dudes? You know what I'm saying? So like when we beat the Lakers and we beat the Clippers and all these other teams at the beginning of the year, it was, in my opinion, I think it was because they didn't understand our play style. They were like, oh, this is a different Spurs small ball lineup where they're going to be running, pushing the pace, playing in transition. And they have this 6'5", 220-pound kid from Kentucky who's just going to run like a fullback to the basket and it can outmuscle most NBA players. So I think now that teams like understand how we play and how we do it, I think a lot of our success did stem from Keldon driving to the rim. And maybe I'm over exaggerating that, but I feel like in the first half, he was kind of the difference maker. That him with the energy, he was kind of that whole different. I feel like what he brings to the Spurs is something that the Spurs haven't had in a very long time. And that's somebody who talks on the floor and like screams and yells. Like that doesn't happen with the Spurs. We didn't see him screaming and yelling a lot tonight. And I know that seems like a weird like thing to pinpoint on, but I really think that energy just changes. It energizes us. It changes how we play. When that is happening, good things are happening on the floor. When he does not do well, and like you're saying, a lot of teams are figuring out how to kind of stop him. I feel like through the first half, basically what I'm trying to say is I feel like through the first half of the year is he was our X factor.
Yes.
And other people may disagree with that. But in my opinion, I don't really care what the stats say. Just watching the games, I feel like they say Patty is the heart and soul of the team. I really felt like Keldon was the heart and soul of the team, even if he scored 9 points. You know what I'm saying? If he was getting blocks and getting rebounds and like, yelling, give me that, you know what? Like, most people like that doesn't happen when you play the Spurs. So teams figuring him out, I think maybe a cause of our offense kind of stifling a bit.
Yes, I agree. And I don't want to say anything drastic yet because like you said, it's only been like the second half of the season where he's kind of been in this slump.
The Spurs could go on a 5-game winning streak after this game.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
He can catch fire. If he just fixes the hesitancy, I don't think his jump shot needs to get much better. But if he just lets it fly, just don't think about it, let it fly, I think he'll get 10 times better.
They've got a pretty good 4-game stretch here. Like going, not to interrupt you, I agree with you completely, but we've got Sacramento, Atlanta, Indiana, and Cleveland. And then you've got a back-to-back with Denver. So these 4 games, if you can go on a 4-game win streak after kind of make up for that 4-game loss streak against the Hornets, Clippers, and the Bucks, that would be really helpful. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, but there's some teams we've beat before, and And, I think Indiana might be the toughest game. Actually, Atlanta might be the
I
toughest
think
game of all
Atlanta,
those.
because
Yeah.
ball movement.
Eastern Conference teams that aren't at the top of the conference.
Yes. Well, they're kind of hot right now with the hiring of Nate McMillan.
Well, Atlanta is, yeah, that's
And
very true.
and they have a high vault 3-point shooting team. Like, they shoot a lot of threes, especially with Trae Young.
Mm-hmm.
And I think how you kill the Spurs is lots of ball movement and lots of threes, because we're not very good switching on pick and rolls. We get lost underneath the basket, cutting, backdoor, all these flare screens and whatnot that open up shooters in the corner. We're kind of struggling on the defensive side as well. As much as we like to talk about our offense maybe being a little bit inconsistent, our defense has not been, that solid. Other than the second quarter, if you want to look at stats, second quarter, we're good, but otherwise, I'm just not seeing it right now.
Yeah, so even against I'm looking at it. When was the All-Star break? So it was the All-Star break. Well, no, it's got to be after then. Okay. I'm looking at the schedule. Was that in March? When was the All-Star break?
I think it was in February.
February. Okay.
It could have been March. I'm all over the place, man, with midterms and San Antonio Spurs content. I don't know what day it is.
And on top of that, it's the COVID schedule to the season kind of whacked things out, because usually like it's always at the same time. We know where it's at. But I'm going to say that I could look this up, but I'm going off of your point of defensive inconsistency in the past. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. We've given up 110 plus points 4 times.
Yeah.
And we've given up 120 to the Bucks, 130 to the Clippers, 130 to the Kings, and then 110 to Cleveland. And the only game we won was Cleveland. So
yeah,
there's one example of, and that was the game that Keldon had 23 and 21.
Yes.
So there are some games where we're definitely letting it go a little bit defensively. And
that being said, I think we're getting ready to come to a close here on this game recap. We've pretty much covered it, every aspect of tonight's game against the Kings.
You're exactly right.
But I do want to give one more shout out. It's on a positive note. I know he didn't shoot all that well, and for just looking at the box score and you're a Spurs fan, perhaps you're a little worried about Devin Vassell. He's our lottery pick, and he hasn't really shown that much offensive ability as of now. He only had 3 points, 3 rebounds, 15 minutes of play. The whole time I watched him tonight, defensively, he was amazing. Whoever he was guarding, he pretty much locked him down. He was great on pick and rolls, switching. He was exceptional on the defensive side of the ball. So if you didn't watch the game and you're a little bit worried about Devin, don't be as of yet. His offense will come. Remember what people said about Kawhi Leonard. He had no offensive game coming out of the draft. He was just a rebounder that could play defense, and now he's a perennial all-star, 2-time finals MVP. Give Devin time. I think he's going to blossom into a terrific player. Maybe not a superstar, but a terrific player.
Well, and the other thing with Devin is he's a great shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got a great jump shot already, which is something Kawhi didn't have. So if he can develop other skills on offense, that would be very interesting. Yeah. And I completely agree with that. Devin always plays great defense. He's just a super lengthy, great perimeter defender who can follow guys to the basket too and always put a contest there. But yeah, anyways, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, I don't know where I was really going with that, but there have been games where the Spurs have given up a lot of points, and they've done it multiple times over the past stretch of games is what I was trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So, when the offense, but even then, I go back and look at some of these other games where we don't have to score that much. If we can just keep our opponent under 100 points, like most likely we're going to win the game. So that's another thing. Like I feel like the Spurs scoring 115, that may have been a product of pace a little bit, but also when the Spurs score 115, they usually win the game they're playing. So this was definitely, there was a lot of, defensive stuff that happened, but I think also, I don't know. We could kind of go into defense more. There's just a lot of, and I know we're wrapping this up here, but there were just a lot of guys who were left open, a lot of lackadaisicalness. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier. When they played the Bulls, they kind of seemed pissed off. Tonight, they didn't seem all there. And that might just be a product of a young team. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's all about preparation and getting in the right mental state. And that's not like a fault of them. Like, that's going to happen to the majority of players in the NBA who are young. And so we talked about inconsistency a lot here. And the more I think about it, Ethan, I kind of just think, maybe all of these other things that I'm talking about don't matter at all. And it's just that they're young, and youth is just going to breed inconsistency because they're continuously learning how to play NBA basketball.
I think you could be right, Jude. It's a long season. Let's see what happens. I know it's been a long time since we've had to struggle with youth, about 22 years. And
I'd rather have these dudes, man. These, like, I mean, not rather than like, like Duncan and all
Timmy
them,
D.
But, yeah, but like considering where we're at after the whole Kawhi fiasco, I'm pretty happy with our young group of players that we have, because I think they all have pretty high ceilings.
I agree with you. Defensive-minded, hard-nosed team basketball is what the Spurs are all about, and that's what our young core will hopefully give us in the future. I'm going to wrap this up, Jude, unless you have another point that you want to
You're good to go.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to SSPN.
Oh, Lonnie, come back. There you go.
Yeah, please, Lonnie. We need a spark off the bench. Please. It's been Drew Eubanks, and that's
These lineups are god-awful. Oh, and start Luka Samanic.
Start Luka. That's going to be hashtag
I'm
start
dead
Luka.
Serious. I don't care if we lose a game, every game for the rest of the year. Start Luka Samanic.
Start Luka Samanic. Maybe put Keldon on the bench. Who knows? That's a teaser for
no.
For
we're
Friday.
Putting DeMar on the bench.
Putting DeMar on the bench. Even bigger of a teaser for Friday. We're going to have all kinds of discussions for our Friday podcast coming out. Obviously, this Friday. What is that? The 2nd of April. And of course, we'll be back Wednesday for the rematch against the Kings at 7:30 at the AT&T Center.
We gotta address one more thing that we just totally forgot to.
Go for it, Jude.
Live streams. We're working on those.
Yes.
We're working. We said we would do those in the trailer. So if you saw our trailer and you watched it, thank you for those who have. I know obviously this episode wasn't live streamed, but we're working on making sure we have the best quality. The best quality possible. Burp there, but yeah, I'm glad that this episode will end with me burping mid-sentence. That's my favorite.
That's what SSPN is all about, Jude. Yeah. Burping mid-sentence. Yes, but we want to bring you the best quality at the least amount of cost on our end. So that will be coming hopefully very quickly. We will keep you guys updated. Let us know what you want to see in the comments section. Hopefully we can get some conversation started with you guys and provide you the content that you want to see. As always, I'm Ethan Quintero. That's Jude McLaren, and we will be back on Wednesday. Thanks so much for watching.